Okay, just let me make sure everything is running fine. Okay, good. Microphone is on, video is on. Good, great. Okay. Okay. Hi, everybody. Yeah, welcome to my first workshop on web binder workshop on high and low key photos at home. Okay. Just give me a second. Let me click it to make it move. Okay. Now, we're going to start. So first thing we need to ask ourselves is, what are high keys and low keys images? A high key image, as you can see on the flower on the right side, is one that is very bright, very light. There's actually very little or no dark shadows that are present at all. Okay. Yep. Good. There's little or no dark shadows that is present at all. Sorry, I'm going to go a little bit closer to my mic. Okay. The background is almost always overexposed. Okay, so you can actually see a blowout on the rear end, on the background itself, and it produces a flatter image with a sense of softness. All right. This kind of images are usually used in product photography. Some of them are used to shoot models, okay, in a very high key lighting, because it flattens, it flatters their features, and also in baby photography. So these are high key images. Thanks. So what is a low key image? Okay, a low key image is one that is usually very dark. There are lots of dark shadows and high contrast between the whites and the blacks. All right, as you can see on the image on the right, the pitcher plant or the plant itself looks very bright or very well lit, but then the background is literally underexposed. So the background is almost or always underexposed. This produces a textured image with a sense of depth. Right? And now these images can be used to show drama, emotions, or to allow the viewers to focus onto the subject itself. Okay, so that's how these low-key images are usually used. Next. So what will I be using for this shoot? Because this is going to be a live shoot. I'm actually going to show you on my live view how the shoots is going to go ahead. So actually I can see it live and how it's been done. So what I'll be using now will be my camera. This is the camera I'll be using, the Sony A7 Mark III. This is my camera that I've been using all this while for most of my shoots, including my, as I've been known for my botanical portraitures. All right. The next one is the lens. It depends on what lens you have and what lens you can use. A zoom lens is also feasible. You have a prime lens, it's also good. So it depends on what you have, because at this time now, since we can't go out and purchase or even rent or something, so we use whatever we can at home. So for me, I use my let me see, what's this? I use my Sigma. I use my Sigma 70mm f2.8 macro art. Okay, this is the macro lens that I use. And sometimes I do use 35mm, okay, 35mm or a 50mm. It depends. Sorry, yeah, 50mm, 35mm, depend on the subject size. So currently today I'll be showcasing using the 70mm macro lens from Sigma. The next thing you also need is a tripod, okay, because most of us are working in this kind of shoot. We are working with actually slower shutter speed. So it's good to have a tripod. Very important to have a tripod. Okay, put this here. Next, it will be good for a table lamp. Here I have is a LED table lamp. Okay, some may have a little bit wider wider kind of table lamps like this with a shade, or that is also usable. Anything that can, a lamp that can do a directional light will be great. Okay, even a torchlight will be more than adequate. Another thing, for the low key, you may need a piece of black cloth. Okay, if you do not have a black cloth, you may even just a black t-shirt, a blue t-shirt, a brown or dark brown t-shirt. The most important thing is that it has to be dark in color. Okay, something dark. And of course, certain things that you need are like this. Some cloth pegs used to clip the dark cloth. Okay, and yeah, that's about it. That's much more about it. That's what we need. And that's all are readily available at home. Okay, they are all readily available at home. So you have your camera, you have your lens, you have your tripod, you have your table lamp. If you have your table lamp, if you don't have, you can even use the lamp or the light, the torch light from your mobile phone itself. It's all workable. So a light source, some dark cloth or dark clothing, or even a dark area which you can turn off the light in your place, in your house, or a wall that is painted with dark colors, all possible. And of course, cloth pegs. For me, for those who have been to my previous workshop, you will know that I always carry two things with me. One is tape, Scotch tape. Of course, I don't carry this big one, I just carry the tape. And the second thing is, I will have some black cards of cloth. These are some of the stuff that I may use around. Because if the lamp is the lights are moving too out, we may use this as like a little shade with tape. We can use it as a shade. Okay, a thing to note, currently I'm using LED lights, so they are actually low heat. You have to be careful when you use light, or when you are working with electricity, or using lamp, or electricity. Make sure that the lamp that you're using, hopefully it's not, you must be careful, because it may get too hot, especially if you use tungsten, or if you use CFL bulb. So you have to be careful with the heat generated from this bulb. LED bulbs are not that hot, so that's why I use them. And it's also readily available in my house. So that's why I'm able to use it. Okay, so I'm going now directly into the shoot itself to show you how is it been done. Currently now it's in the night, so I'm unable to shoot, I'm unable to use the window now. So what I'll use is a light box to emulate a bright sunny day. Okay, so a high key image is more or less, a high key image has more light or exposure on the background than on the subject. Okay, always remember this. A high key image has more light or exposure on the background, on its background, on the image background, rather than on the subject itself. So in order to shoot this at home without all your studio setup, what you need is a bright sunlight area or outdoor. Okay, best if you were to face a window, as you can see the diagram, with a preferably in your subjects are indoor. You're shooting facing the window, and preferably there is a day curtain, so that it can create or break up the light itself, to soften up the light. So the cameras, of course, is manual settings. I'll be shooting live view. Some camera, most camera, even Canon, Nikon, Sony, Olympus, Fuji, anything, they all have live view. So you can actually go onto your live view. I'll be using spot metering. Okay, my ISO, I'm working within the 100 to 800 range with 2 seconds. So as you can see in the below, there's the camera, the subject, and then the window itself. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move towards a live view. Just give me a second while I set it up. Okay. So I'll be using what I use to attach my lens to my camera is actually the MC11 adapter, because I bought I got this as a mount that is not E mount. So I use the MC11 adapter, just to let you all know. Okay, so I'm setting up. Hope you all can see what am I doing. Let me switch to another mode. Give me a second. Okay, just give me a second while I go into my remote. I'll be sharing it in a while. Just give me a second. Okay, now we are into my live view setting. As you can see, here's my subject. Okay. Okay. All right. Just let me focus onto my subject. Okay, what happened behind, as you can see, okay, what you can see now, can you all hear me? Okay, I bring the mic closer. So, as you can see on my live view, what happens is that I have this, imagine there's a curtain behind, like a day curtain with the bright day itself. So we're facing the window. Okay, and the moment I put my subject in, so usually what happens is that if you were to if you were to go on autofocus or aperture settings, okay, it will meter against the window. So now we are going into manual mode, all right, and I'm going to meter against the subject itself. As you can see, that's my point, and I'm using spot metering. Okay, so my spot metering on the Sony, what happens is that it focuses onto the spot where my focus is and check the metering over on it. As you can see. So most people ask me, what kind of setting would you set? What kind of setting do you set? So the first thing I start with is my shutter speed. All right. So my lens is my lens is 70 mm. So the first thing I do is I set my shutter speed to 1:80. Okay, I keep that as 1:80. And I have my aperture wide open. First, I set it wide open. So if you are at f2.8, you set it at f2.8. If you are at 5.6, you just set it at 5.6. Wide open first. All right. Then we work with our ISO. Okay, with this kind of ISO, with my existing 1:80, okay, I set my ISO to, let's try 400. Does it work? No, I get a little bit bad. So let's set it to 1:800. It looks nice and bright, as you can see in the image. So if you are using a 100mm lens, then you set 1:100 or 1:120. If you are using a 50mm lens, then you set 1:60. That's the start. That's the benchmark we start with. Okay, that's the ballpark. Sorry, not the benchmark. That's the ballpark we start with. So as you can see, the first thing, my after one shot, I take a picture and immediately you can see that my background is already in high key. Okay, let me see if I can just share the histogram. If you can see that the histogram is very skewed towards the right. So what I can do is from there, I can lower down my shutter speed. If I lower down my shutter speed, you notice that it gets brighter and brighter, and the histogram moves towards the right. Okay, so that's a little bit too bright. Here you go. And if we take a picture like this, okay, straight away we get a high key image. And it's so simple. Right? This is the high key, and I have not used a single flash. I have not really need a studio setup. What I do was I shoot into a bright sunny day with a day curtain, and I expose onto my subject. Please note that you need a sunny day. If it's gloomy day and it's going to rain or it's in the evening, it's not going to work. Okay, it's not going to work. And notice that the subject is in the shade itself. Okay, away from the light source. So we away from the background light source. Okay, that's the most important thing. All right, great. So if you were to look at my histogram, you can see that currently I'm at 1:40, f2.8, and ISO 800. What we can do also is another way, we can increase if we increase the aperture, what happens is that we have slightly more depth of field. So our background comes out a little bit more. The puffins in the back becomes more prominent. We can see it rather than it being blurred. But if you notice that what happened is when you increase the aperture, the image becomes more dull. So it's not as high key as you hope it to be. So one way is to increase the shutter speed, okay, or increase the ISO, up to you. It depends. If for some camera, your best ISO you can reach up to is about 800, then it's good to lower down your shutter speed. If you can go to 1006, jolly well, just move it to 1006, because nowadays all our cameras are very, very, very advanced. And even at a high ISO, we can actually get very nice, good, clean images that is good for posting on the web or even printing itself. Okay, and with some nice noise correction on the Lightroom or on Photoshop, you can actually clean up the image from the noise. But for me, on my camera, the ISO 800 seems to work very well. Okay, so this is a high key shot. Okay, so what I can do is I can also I keep decreasing the shutter speed a bit more. Sorry, I decrease it, chop, chop, chop. Yep, here you go. If I decrease the shutter speed, you can actually see that it gets brighter and more high key, right? But you have to be careful not to push it too far. If you look at my histogram on the lower right-hand corner, you can see that it starts moving further and further towards the right, and that's not what we really want on a high key. Okay, because we still want the subject not to be too blown out. So I would rather work at 1:20. Yeah, actually, no, 1:25 in my shutter speed. There'll be a good shutter speed to use for this current image itself. Okay, good. So now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go back to low key. So now we have done the high key. We're going to do the low key. Okay. So to shoot a low key, to shoot a low key image, okay, you need to ensure that there's more light onto the subject than onto the background. So it's the reverse. There should be more light onto the subject than onto the background itself. So when then do we shoot this image? We shoot it in the evening or in the night, preferably in the evening itself. And location of the shoot is of course indoor, because now most of us can't go out because of the lockdown, even here in Singapore. And facing a dark part of, and where do we face? We do not face the window anymore. You can, but hopefully it's dark outside. And we can face the dark place in the house where it's painted in the darker colors, or we can use a black fabric. Okay, same thing here. We will use manual setting, live view, spot metering, ISO 1:800, and I usually have a 2-second shutter delay. Okay, because we are working with low shutter speed. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, I'm going to turn off the light. Not my light, but the one that simulates like a window. Oh, there you go, straight away. And we're going to use a black cloth. I'm going to clip it over that side. I'm going to clip the back cloth over there as if it was a background, black background. So this is what I'm going to do now. Okay. Okay, I'm back, and I've clipped a black cloth on the background as a background. So if I'm going to show you how it's going to look. Immediately, just by clipping it, just by putting a black cloth with the same exposure, with the same settings, I have not moved. Immediately, your background becomes black. All right, immediately. So, but in this kind of image, it looks as if it was a high key image with a black background. It looks really, really, it looks odd. It looks a little bit fake. So this is because currently we are, it looks like the subject is overexposed and we have literally cut and pasted onto a black background. So we need to do something about it. So this is when the lamp comes into play. The reason why it looks like that is because our ambient light is exposed to ambient light, but because the ambient light get absorbed by the dark cloth, so it looks like as though it's black. So this is when we come into play using a table lamp. So I clip this table lamp and straight away point my lamp on it. And now it looks a little bit too blown out. So what we can do, if it's blown out, we can first increase the shutter speed. Let's increase the shutter speed. So as you can see, I'm slowly moving it to 1:160. So you can start to see the shadows coming out. That's how the shadows covers and creates to shape out the subject. So let's do it to 1:125. What we can also do is to improve our ISO. We can also do that. So I can actually increase the ISO to 200. Okay, it's a little bit too underexposed. So what I can do is I can decrease my shutter speed, and voila, straight away again it's back. Okay, so this is a low-key image. Take a shot, and that's it. This is a low-key image. It's very simple. But when we look at this and say, hey, this low-key image, the light source is in one way, a certain part of the subject is not being highlighted. So every one of us at home currently now, we have something like this, a metal plate, a tali. I think everybody at home have either a metal plate or tali, maybe in In India or even in my country in Singapore, we use a lot about this. This we use for steaming our food. So if we use this, what we can do is we can actually bounce the light off this metal plate, okay, to shine onto our subject, creating a kind of, you can see, just catch the light itself and point onto the subject. So if we were to use it and create that light on it, notice that it starts to come up. Shift the light a bit more. Yep. And we can do something like this. So you can do creative things. May it not be a tali, or it can be a piece of cloth, sorry, a piece of white paper. It can be aluminum foil, you know, you create aluminum foil. Or you can even do something like that, where you put it above and instead hit the light up onto the subject and create a kind of top lighting. Right? So there are many, many different ways that you can actually use your torch and a reflector to create a kind of look for your subject. Wait, just let me increase my shutter speed. No, decrease my shutter speed. Sorry, not increase my shutter speed. And then we use it like a reflector to reflect light on it. So different position creates different look. Okay. So it's just a method of how we can use whatever we can find at home to produce or create a kind of look that we want in onto our subject. So if you don't have access to a table lamp, or your table lamp is a rigid table lamp, what we can do is on our mobile phone, we can use it. You can use the torch on our mobile phone. I'll turn this off as a lighting. You can see my video. You can use it as a lighting for our subject. So by moving it around, you can see that it also works. So I'm actually moving it around to create a kind of look that I want. So even a torch from our mobile phone can be used as a light source. Okay, but it's very important to note that the background must have at least a certain amount of distance from the subject itself, so that the light, you see in my diagram here, a place where the light don't shine, some distance, so that the light from our lamp or the light from our mobile phone do not shine onto the cloth itself. What happens is that then the cloth will start reflecting the light back, and then it's no more low-key. Okay, we have some colors will come out from it. So that's the way. It's simply understanding the fact that how light works. So I'll recap again. Okay. Oops, sorry. I'll recap again. A high key image, there is more light or exposure onto the background than onto the subject. Okay. So we have to make sure that there's more light onto the background than onto the subject. Time of shoot, bright day or bright sunny day. Location, subject must be indoor, facing an open window. Okay, preferably one with a day curtain. Now, of course, your camera setting, you can go on manual mode. Manual as in you control your aperture and your shutter. You can still have autofocus to focus onto your subject. You can work on live view, spot metering, ISO 100 to 800. And because you may end up working with a slow shutter speed depending on your lens, you may want to set a 2-second delay. Okay. Yes. So next is okay. So sorry. Next is just let me check. Am I on? Yeah. Okay. So the low key, I say again, image has more light or exposure onto the subject than onto the background. It's the opposite. And we shoot it in the evening at night. And the location of the shoot, indoor, facing a dark part of the house, or a black fabric. Same thing, manual setting, meaning that the aperture, the ISO, and the shutter speed is set manually, but you can still go on autofocus if you want. The live view, if possible, spot metering, ISO ranging from 100 to 800 or whichever you're comfortable with, and with some delay, so on the tripod, some delay on the remote, or you can use a remote or a time delay for your shutter. Okay, and that's the light diagram. So things to take note. This shoot relies heavily on ambient light, especially for the high key, and hence the shutter speed will be slow. So you cannot use it on very fast moving subject, such as, just give me a second. You cannot use it on very fast moving subject, such as little children or animals, or your pet bird in the house, or you put up your fish tank and you try to shoot the fish. It's a little bit difficult. You can try by increasing your ISO itself to help compensate for a faster shutter speed. You can try, but do note that it relies heavily on ambient light. As for the low key, it also relies on the light that you have, meaning that the lamp that you use, so how bright it is. If you have a brighter lamp, maybe you're able to work with a faster shutter speed. Like just now, I'm able to work at 1:125 or 1:200. So it depends on your lamp itself. So if you have a brighter lamp, good. Okay, so second thing to note is that do not place your subject directly under the fan or the breeze or window where it's blowing and there's a breeze. That's why I say it's good to have a day curtain down, because this will result in motion blur of your subject. If you are shooting subjects like this one that I have, they don't really move. But if it's plants or something that is light, or even bubbles or anything itself, it may wave or move under a slight movement of breeze. And this again will result in blur. So you have to be careful of it. So you have to take care of that. All right. So what I would like to do is I'd like to invite you all to share your shots. Try it out. Try out the shoots. Try out shooting like high key or low key, and share your shots on Facebook or Instagram. And I would like you all to tag on Facebook at DCP Expeditions and at Shannon Heng. That's for Facebook. And on Instagram, I would like you all to tag at DCP Expeditions LLP and at Through the Frame using the hashtag DCP Webinar. All right, as you can see on the screen itself. Tag it so that I can see them. And when I see them, I will try my best to comment on it and to give my 2 cents worth of how to, if it's good, then there's not, if there's something that I can help or give an advice to help improve the image, I will try my best to do it. So do tag us and do let us see your work and try something creative. When I say dark cloth, when I say in the night you cannot shoot through the window, maybe you can shoot through it, where everybody turns off, where the sky is dark, but then opposite you have people turning on their lights and it looks, a little bouquet of lights as a background. That may be something. So try and error, try different things, try different approach, and to see what you all can come up with. Be creative, because this is the time where we can actually sit down, think through it, and see how we can create something out of all the little things we have at home, like using even a tali as a reflector, a piece of t-shirt, or even different kind of color of t-shirts to create different kind of tones and lights. Lamp. Currently, I'm using a lamp that is a yellow lamp, but I've adjusted my white balance, so it looks as though it's a white lamp. That's about it. So what happened now is that we will be going into the question and answer. Well, wait, just Q&A section. Okay, so I'd like to invite you all. Just let me go into my Q&A. I'd like to invite you all to just write down what you all want to say so I can read and then answer the question as much as possible. Okay. Okay. I'm open to question. I'm sorry. Q&A. Okay. All right. So just okay. Any specific white balance setting for both high key and low key? Okay, wait. Any specific white balance? Sorry, who's? Just need to go back to the check. Ah, yes. Any specific white balance for high key and low key? Okay. When we are using high key, we are actually working with the ambient light indoor and the color of the light from the sun outdoor. So if none of your lights are on indoor, I would like to advise using 5500 Kelvin. Kelvin, yes, Kelvin. Okay. For low key, you will have to look at what color your light is, your lamp light is. If it's yellow light, then you balance it off with your white balance. If it's white light, which usually becomes very blue, then you have to balance it with your white balance to get the kind of color you want. So I think this high, okay. So like a yellow color flower, if you want to, yes, it's a little bit, you notice that there's this magenta color, so and too yellowish. So you may want to move your white balance towards the more bluish for that high key look. No, for that more whitish look. Okay. What is the function of the 2-second delay? So when we press the shutter, there is some movement. Okay, we move the camera. So the 2-second delay helps the camera to stable down before the shot happens. Okay, so this is also to help reduce what they call that motion blur. All right. Would you say any? Sorry, Pruvi Pruvi. She says, when would you say an image is overexposed or underexposed? When would I say an image is overexposed or underexposed? You see, we have to focus on to our subject. When I say that the subject is overexposed, it means that there's too much light on the subject till there is no details. That's more of what I'm saying. And underexposed is when there's not enough light onto the subject itself, that it becomes you can't see the details itself, and you can't see how the shadow creates the shape itself. That's when it's underexposed. Okay, let me see what's the next question. How does it Anjali, how does it matter what time of the day, since we are using a black cloth? Very good answer. If you are using a black cloth, then you say it doesn't matter if we are shooting in a day or in a night. Correct. It doesn't matter. It only matters depending on how bright your room is. Okay, so you have to be careful. You can shoot it also in the day using the black cloth to shoot low key, but you need to make sure that the ambient light inside that room is not too bright until the ambient light lights up the black cloth. Then you will lose that low key look. Okay, tip. Alok Rasal, tip for high key image during bird photography, do's and don't. I have to tell you, birds are fast moving subject. High key images, birds are fast moving subject. If you are using slow shutter speed, it's not going to work. Okay, I think that is more a wildlife shot, so it may not be a suitable question, so I'll move on to next. So from Amit, he says usually high key, low key images look good in black and white. What are my thoughts? They do look good in black and white, because what happened is black and white, in black, then our white, our focus will then go onto the subject itself. So I usually like to use black for my low keys as background colors and white as high key for my colors. So next. Okay, I like this question. This question by SL Saini. Okay, how would a histogram look to get a perfect picture? Okay, a lot of people, depending on the kind of picture you want, for a low key image, sorry, we start with high key. For a high key image, we will notice that the histogram will skew more towards the right. And for a low key image, it will skew more to the left. As if you want an image that is properly throughout balanced and short, then you will notice that it is like a bell shape. But not all the time we need such a kind of histogram to look at. Okay. Thanks for the. What you talk about? Okay. Now I will repeat again. A question by Surab Mukadam. What is the golden rule? There is no real golden rule, but I would like to say that okay, what is the golden rule? The shutter speed. First, we start with shutter speed. The shutter speed, it's best to keep it. If you are using a 100mm lens, then we will use 1:100 or close to that as a benchmark to start off with the shutter speed. Okay, I always like to start off with the shutter speed because it's easier to determine. Okay, to start off. So it depends on the lens. If you are 50mm, then you use a 1:50 or 1:60. That's your benchmark for your shutter speed. So for this kind of shoot in this high key and low key, what I'll use is I will usually have it wide open on my aperture. So on my lens, on my current Sigma 70mm is f2.8. So I will just use f2.8 to start with as a benchmark. If I need a little bit more depth of field, I will lower it down to f4 or even f5.6. But you must understand that it's a balance. It's a triangular balance between shutter speed, ISO, and aperture. So when one increase, something has to decrease. Okay. So if you are using high shutter speed, if you want to increase the higher shutter speed, then you have to increase either the ISO, okay, so that you can compensate the higher shutter speed, or decrease your or open up your aperture. Okay, so there are limits, and you have to play with these limits itself to create a suitable or acceptable image. Okay, next from Apav K. What should one do for a low-key shot in a garden of flowers? Well, the first thing to start with is if you are shooting outdoor. Just now, there's one of the participants says if you have a black cloth, it doesn't matter if it's day or night. Correct. Now, this is when it matters. If you are in a garden of flowers, okay, in your house garden, when you step up, if you want low key, you definitely have to start at night, because then your ambient light is there's no more ambient light, so you can all have black background. Then you take your torch, or you take your lamp, or your lamp that is movable, and you shine on it, and then straight away you get your low key image, and you just meter, or you do your metering according to your subject itself. Just like exactly how I do it for my just now that I show how I do it for my low key images. It's the same thing. Okay. But do take note, please do not go out into a garden that is out of your house, because currently everybody is having a lockdown. The last thing I want is you to carry all your gears and move outside and get stopped by the police. So if you have a garden in your house, you have a rooftop garden, or you have whatever plant, just take pictures of that. Okay. So okay. Same from above again. Should we follow the composition rules, such as rule of third, or better try to have a symmetry flow of the image? When it comes to that, creativity of how the image flows is up to you. Okay. In my this example, I use two birds. So there isn't two. I mean, I use one of those two puffins. So it doesn't really have any flow or composition, but you can actually use whatever compositional flow that you want. Okay, you want to use the rule of third, the golden Fibonacci curve, whatever you want to use, or even diagonals. So I think for me, I like using rule of third. Okay, that's the one that I usually use, because it is simple to understand. Because I like to show, when I showcase my work, I like it to make it as simple as possible for more people as possible to understand. It's people who are not into photography, the rule of third helps them to see better or even feel better. And if you look at some of my botanical portraiture work, flower photography, they are always portraiture work. So rule of third tends to help a little better. Rule of third or diagonals that I like to use. Okay. So Nika asks, how can we avoid highlights of the light source on the subject? A very good question. How can we avoid a blowout? Simple answer is, if you see a blowout, that means that your light source is too close to your subject. So you have to move it slightly away. Okay. So if you move, you have to move it slightly away from your subject. So you just, by moving it backwards a bit, straight away your blown out will be gone. And actually, it's actually better if you do, when you move back, if you notice any highlight, so that the flow of shadows actually looks better. Okay, so that is to avoid the highlights of the subject. Do not put your lamp too close to your subject. Okay, just move it away. You want it to a little bit more spread out the light. Okay. I am sharing a picture of the pink flower. Wait on. Just let me scroll down a bit more. Okay. Yeah, that's a nice image. Just me. Okay. From SL Sini, why do we use wide aperture even though we put our cameras on a tripod? Okay, like I say, it is a starting point. It is not something that must be fixed. You must use the widest. Starting point, you start off with your shutter speed according to your lens, and then your aperture, set it to the widest. If you want to stop down to a smaller shutter, with an aperture of a higher value, like for me, f2.8, I want to stop down to f4, I can. But you need to have a starting point. So if you start out with your shutter speed at about f8, f11, then you need to go both ways to see which one you like. So if you start at f2.8, which is the widest, then if you don't like it, then you can slowly close up your aperture to move towards more to get more depth of field, to get more to reduce the light. You work on that. Okay. Amit asks, what is the name of the software that I use to control my Sony camera on the computer? It is called Sony Imaging Edged. Okay, Edge, sorry, not Edge. IMAGINE, Imaging Edge, EDGE. It's a group of software. They have a viewer, they have some editing, and they have a live view. So depending on what Sony camera you use, it can work with the Sony camera to produce a live view. Okay. Next, low key and high key are restricted, confined to tabletop and still. Okay. If you look at the current shoot that we are doing, if you have a larger window, a large day window, you can even shoot people if they can hold still. Okay. Or you have a bright lamp or bright light, like I have, like what I made behind me. You can have a subject that is big, okay, or human being is also possible, but you must always understand that there are constraints towards using not using flash to photograph your high key, right? So if you're having a light like mine like that, which is actually a bulb using a shoot-through umbrella, yeah, you can light up a human being easily. No issues about that. Okay. So, Sonika asked me, how do you further post-process your image? I like to shoot right out of camera. Okay, I always want to get my out of camera. When I shoot out of camera, I try to get it as right as possible. So I usually post-process it in either Lightroom or Photoshop. And in Photoshop, it's usually to control the curves, just to touch up the amount of contrast that I need, and also to sometimes even reduce the sharpness, because I don't want everything to be very sharp or very focused, because it sort of creates a look where everybody is looking at everything in the image, lost focus. So sometimes I like to make my image a little bit blur, soften my image a bit. I may do that seldom, but I may do that. Okay, and yeah, some color corrections, because I shoot a lot of flowers, so I try to get it as close to the actual color as possible. And what other things I do? Not much. I don't really work too much in post-processing. If I, in my approach, if I take more than 20 minutes to do an image, it means that I have shot it wrongly. Okay, for my flower photography, in my opinion, if it's a product shoot or if it's a model shoot, a human shoot, sometimes we need to spend a little bit more time to correct certain light issues or contrast issues. That may take a little bit more. But because I've been shooting flower for so long, so for me, I would rather use my lighting, actual lighting, to get it correct first, and then spend a little bit less time behind the computer trying to post-process it to get to what I want. Usually 20 minutes is all I spend. And usually is to just adjust the curves, either reduce or increase the sharpness, and that's about it. Touch up some area, maybe insects have fly across right in front of the screen and it got captured like a blur. So certain things like that, I may just touch it up, that's all. But not more than 20 minutes on an image. Okay, above us, if I do not have a dark cloth handy, would it be okay to spot meter and then make the image dark in post-processing in PP to achieve the low key effect? Good question. If you do not have a dark cloth, you can actually what you need to do is to photograph it into a dark area. So what happens is that if you notice that what you can do is actually turn off all the lights in the house. Sorry, in the room that you are shooting, not in the house. In the room that you are shooting, and then you have your light shining on your subject. Now, when there's no ambient light around the house, it will naturally be dark. Okay, so you may not even need your dark cloth, but as long as you turn off as much light as possible to create a sense of no ambient light in the background of the subject, and then you light up your subject with a light, I think that would be that would suffice itself. It would be sufficient. Okay. Yeah, that would be sufficient. Okay, any more question? Let me check a while. Alok Chogi asked, any tips for outdoor high key and low key images, especially flower? It is the same thing that I would, if you see how I've done it, or even even in the lighting diagram, low key and high key is the same approach. It's the time that you shoot. So if you're in outdoors, if you want to shoot high key, you have to actually shoot it in the day, and try to make sure that your subject is slightly in the shade and the background has more light exposed to it. So you may carry a piece of, you may bring the plant under the shelter to photograph, or carry an umbrella, a black umbrella is also possible. And for low key, you may want to shoot it in the night. Okay, so it depends a lot on the timing itself and how you want to shoot it. Just give me a minute. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for participating. This will be just before I go. There will be a, sorry. Let me share. Just before I go, let me share my screen. Okay, just before we go, I would like you all to also, there will be a DCP online tutorial of basic photography learning. Okay, it's a workshop that is conducted online, and to teach you how to the basics of photography, which is, in my opinion, the fundamental of everything of photography. You need to get your basic right. So do check it out. It's in April 2020. Okay, do check it out on DCP website at dcpexpeditions.com/workshop. Okay, you can find it there, DCP online tutorial, or go on Facebook or Instagram. Do sign up, and yep. Sorry. Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. Do sign up or even do check it out, and so that have a strong fundamentals in photography to help your to give you a good foundation for your journey in photography itself. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, signing off, everybody. Bye bye.